To the Public Safety Committee meeting. Tonight we'll be discussing animal control. Tonight I'm Ron Brewer, the chair of the Public Safety Committee. I'm your councilman at large, and we are joined by my colleague, Councilman Cloris Lay, councilman at large, Councilwoman Ty Atkins, vice president and councilwoman of the 4th District, Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell of the 5th District. And I see our attorney, Renzo Williams, is on also. Commander Colbert is on. I see our Deputy Chief Jackson is on. And I see Ms. Sabrina Hankey that's on. I would like to get started. I would ask Sabrina if she would give us an overview of the amendment that's being proposed for tonight. And you're muted at this time. And I'm sorry, and our President William Godwin is on also. I'm sorry.
Okay, great. Yes, my favorite councilman, because you all are humane supporters, and I appreciate that. So President Godwin and Councilman Brewer and Councilman Weatherspoon have all been on record saying that they support more humane treatment of animals in the city of Gary, and specifically support ways to increase the enforcement of the animal ordinance that the city council passed unanimously, Mr. Brewer, under your presidency. So the city came in line with the rest of other cities, and now we're kind of at the point where we need to talk about how to enforce it. If, with your permission, I can just share the screen and give a brief overview of what I submitted. Would that be appropriate, or should I just talk?
Fine.
Okay. So we looked over, I think I'm sharing the screen now. Hold on for just a minute. We examined what is going on in other cities and came up with some recommendations, better enforcement of animals in the city of Gary. I don't think that the city council really understands how underfunded Gary Animal Control has been for years. Probably because no one has brought it to your attention. That's just my guess, and I could be wrong. But I think that if you understood exactly what was, how underfunded it was, you would be interested in making some changes. One of the things that we found through a survey several years ago that has now been supplemented through COVID is that over half of Gary's residents are pet owners. We estimate about 56% of our residents are dog owners, and then the rest would be cat. And the intake at Gary Animal Control has gone up 74% over the last 5 years, but the funding hasn't matched it. The vast majority of Gary residents who have pets love their pets. They treat them as family. They'll do anything for them. A lot of times they are very loving owners, but there are some who need help, and they need assistance with things like pet food, education on how animals are supposed to be housed. And of course, it's very arcane and cruel to leave a dog on a chain for its life. That has been changed throughout the country, and Gary is no exception. Gary is now outlawed that as well, but now we need help to go out and reach out in the community under an educate, don't confiscate program, where we envision a GPD, the fire department, and possibly code enforcement, helping us keep a lookout for what's going on, and then letting us know if people need resources, because most people want to do the right thing. They don't want to be cruel. They want to help their animal, but they need help from us. In the city of Gary, the vast majority of our pets have never been seen by a veterinarian. And the state of Indiana recently passed a law that becomes effective in July that mandates that all pets that get picked up by a shelter, including animal control, have to be spayed and neutered before they're released. And I don't agree with a lot that Indianapolis does, but I agree with this because we are inundated with pets who are unwanted and dumped, especially in the 1st District, which is probably why President Godwin is so supportive of trying to help ameliorate some of these situations. Most of the dogs get dumped here, and then we have volunteers who try to help them, get them to Humane Society, what have you, and I certainly don't have any judgment against those people, because sometimes that is the most humane thing to do. So law enforcement throughout the country is getting very aggressive and trying to help law enforcement agencies get more active in identifying pet abuse and neglect, because that is a segue crime. The FBI and the FOP and other law enforcement agencies are taking this approach that if we increase community policing, One way to do that is through identifying what's going on with pet abuse and pet neglect, because it's a warm, fuzzy way that the police can get involved and sort of get to know their beat without being overly policing. You know, we don't want to overly police pet owners. They don't need it. We want to identify people who need help and help them. So I've identified why, you know, some of the resources. The first 2 pages are our findings about Gary and other jurisdictions, but then the references start really on page 3, and you can go through the references if you'd like to. But the bottom line is that Gary Animal Control is grossly underfunded. We're funding our animal control services at about $2 per capita, which is way behind. Some of our surrounding communities are spending $17 per capita. And some of the practical things that we need to look at is that our shelter has not been upgraded for years. I mean, I think if the city council saw the condition of the shelter, you would want to do something very quickly. For several years, the animals who were abused and brought in, you know, through horrible conditions, then had no heat for 3 winters in a row. So we need to have a more humane profile of our city. We think that it will help children. There's all kinds of research about teens and young people seeing animal cruelty and animal neglect, who are then more likely to become violent as they grow up, because they become inured to seeing neglect. And conversely, when you teach kids to be compassionate, they grow up to have better interactions with their peers, less violent, and it goes all down the line and follows them through their adulthood. One of the main things that we're talking about for animal control, and asking the city council to give us your blessing to get involved and help funding. And I don't know when the appropriate point is to do this, or when the funding cycle starts, but I thought we should start early and let the council know what the data say. At $2 per capita in the city of Gary, like I said, we are so underfunded, it's embarrassing. If we would increase the pay for our animal control officers, right now the animal control officers in Gary are classified as in the clerical pool, but they carry guns. They have arrest authority. They put their lives on the line just like everyone else, and they should be afforded the same category as public safety. And right now our animal control officers are paid about $27,500 a year. And I pulled out the animal control officer salaries for our surrounding towns, and the average is about $55,000 a year. So we've got this huge discrepancy. And I know that's a problem throughout the police department, but certainly in animal control, because it has so many implications for other walks of life, in academic development, cognitive development, emotional development. We get up to speed with other cities. And then the other thing we recommend is that the city council consider upgrading the Gary shelter. We need specific intake shelters so that dogs can be segregated when they're brought in. I think they're bringing in about 480 dogs a year, a considerable number. And we just need to upgrade our facility, and then possibly we would support joining or helping the Humane Society of Northwest Indiana, which is on Milton Road in Gary, expand their facilities, because our dogs by and large go to the Humane Society, and we need to help them expand their facility if we can. So we presented 2 options. If we just build a new shelter, the recommended square footage is about 3,883. The cost would be about $582,000. A much more affordable approach would be to upgrade what they have now, build a 4-car garage, and then supplement or make help the Humane Society of Northwest Indiana expand their facility, and that price tag is a total of $104,000. So we're looking at increasing, but we're recommending that the city council consider increasing the budget for Gary Animal Control to at least bring it up to our poorest neighbors. And an annual budget, I think, was somewhere in the $800,000 range. To just bring us up to speed with our neighbors. And if you look at the tables after, I mean, you can see all the data that support what we're recommending. I won't bore you with those, but the data are there. And I appreciate you inviting me to address the council. I'm very grateful to the council for having passed this ordinance, and for the expressions of Councilman Godwin, Brewer, and Cozy Weatherspoon in support of a more humane city. It matters a lot to a lot of us. And so hats off to you, and I appreciate it, and I look forward to figuring out how we can do better.
Thank you. I appreciate the overview. I'm going to have Councilman Godwin. Are you on? I don't know if I.
Yes, how are you?
Good, and you? I would just
Good,
like to know if
good.
you have anything to add before I open up to the deputy chief.
Well, I will just want to thank Sabrina and the entire Gary Animal Welfare Coalition team for doing a fantastic job in getting our attention on this issue. I know we corrected some issues earlier this year, about a month ago, in terms of how people were able to reach out to the department. So I know that's a big plus, and I think we should continue to work closely with the officers in the animal control division, along with the chief, to see how we can continue to make progress. But I think that Sabrina has laid out an excellent roadmap for all of us.
I will turn it over to Deputy Chief Jetson and Commander Colbert. You all can take it from here.
All right, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And thank you very much for allowing us to attend this particular meeting. I do like to thank Ms. Sabrina Hake for the job she's done. I just received this package just a couple of days ago, and she really put this together pretty good. Yeah, and but as it relates to the costs associated with our animal control unit, or the lack of funding that we have for it, I too would like to see this increase. Of course, no, we can't probably do what's being asked, but I would like for us as a whole to definitely consider the changes. The Chief and I have spoken a number of times on a budgetary level as it relates to the salaries of the officers themselves who work in the unit, and the fact that we need to increase the funding for the department overall. But definitely, where the officer of concern, that has been a concern of ours for quite some time. I would allow Commander Colbert and Sergeant Breitenstein, who should be on, to speak more in depth about the unit itself. Sergeant Breitenstein is supervising the unit, and the unit itself falls under the command of Commander Colbert. So I would allow Commander Colbert to expand on it.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
I just want to thank you for having me here. I want to say, Ms. Hike, thank you. I just received your proposal this morning, and I looked over it, and I was very impressed. Not to sound like a broken record, but it's obvious you put a lot of time and thought into this, and most of your numbers are spot on. And I just want to go on record stating that I love your option number 2. It seems to be the most feasible, and it will put us leaps and bounds ahead of where we are. So thank you for that. I'm here in support of Sergeant Breitenstein and everything that she does on a daily basis. It's true, they're seriously underfunded. We don't really have a legitimate budget. Everything that we've always done has been to keep everything together with zip ties and duct tape. There have been a few improvements to the building, and the structure itself is very sound, but it's truly outdated. And it's also an embarrassment when the rescues and other outside entities that assist us come to visit. So I would plead with the council to assist us in obtaining the things that we need. To go more so in depth, I'd like to pass it over to Sergeant Breitenstein, because she is the true backbone of animal enforcement.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hey, Sabrina.
Hey.
I want to start by saying I really do appreciate Sabrina and Jerry from the Humane Society, who have helped me a lot with this research and just options, and I appreciate them very much. I also am a huge fan of option 2. Obviously, a new building would be great, but realistically, I can make 2 work. And I appreciate y'all letting us speak, and I don't even know what to say. I'm honored to be here, actually, and I don't know what else to say other than I look forward to some help. I would love for my guys to have a raise and some better equipment, and we can do a fabulous job for the city.
Hello, this is Jerry Caniste. If I could just add something. I would like to offer to the council to come and tour the Humane Society in Gary. I think that it would be enlightening probably to all of you, but it would also show you what we are doing on a day-to-day basis to handle the volume of abandoned and abused animals that come in. And I think it would help you understand a well-run shelter and what we can do to help the city with the additional, volume we're talking about.
I would definitely be open to going out to see the shelter, see how you all operate, and to see the current shelter that the Gary Police Department has also. Sabrina, I do have one question.
Sure.
I do like option 2. I think it's doable that we possibly can do option 2, but want to know, how did you come up with the costs? Would this really do exactly everything you need to happen there at the shelter if we did a full renovation?
It's a conservative ask, cognizant of Gary's budget limitations. But I talked to Sergeant Breitenstein, who has been doing an unbelievable job with she's been making bricks without hay for years. And talked to her about what she absolutely had to have to upgrade the facility that she has. And the containment for when you first bring the dogs in, you have to separate them because if they have a disease like parvo or something, they could infect all the other dogs. So it's absolutely essential. It's not even best practices. It's essential to separate the dogs on intake. And then she described what she needed for the storage and the outside. And so the estimate for upgrading the existing structure was about $50,000, and then the upgrade, the contribution we'd have to make to the Humane Society, because if they expand, let's face it, they're taking Gary's dogs. So, they operate only on donations, and we would have to help them with that expansion because they don't have the funds to do it either. So we kind of have to give them that assist. So it's both of them. And then the 3,800 square feet, actually Jerry Canise of the Humane Society did some research on what the recommended square footage is per dog based on intakes that we had. So we looked at our intake history, which, as I said, has gone up 74% in the last 5 years, and then calculated out the square footage based on that. And then I just took it by $150 a square foot, which is the average build cost in Northwest Indiana.
Okay. All right. Is there any coming from any of my colleagues?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question too. First of all, I'm going to apologize. I did not receive the original 2019 ordinance, and I will accept responsibility for that. But I thought one of the changes that was being made, that was a long presentation, but the change was being made was they're forcing all people to house their animals. Is that correct?
The change is that they limit, consistent with throughout the state, the amount of time that a dog can spend on a chain.
I'm sorry. No, what are you asking in the ordinance, not state? State usually formulate ordinances for protection downstate as opposed to cities. You're asking all of the people with dogs, bring those dogs into the home, make them companion dogs. Is that correct?
The ordinance limits the amount of time that a dog can spend on a chain. It can't be on a chain when it's over 90 or under 32 degrees, and it has to be brought in off the chain at night. And the purpose for that is because a lot of times we have dogs that get forgotten. I've talked to a number of elderly people who their son will bring the dog over and they'll put him in the backyard. 3 days later, they remember that the dog's there. So we have this kind of situation going on. People don't mean to do it, but so we've got a lot of animal neglect, I would say, and we need to educate people on the proper way to handle their animals. The humane ordinance, the reason I brought up the state is because this is an ordinance that was passed in most of the rest of the state several years before Gary did it.
Okay, and again, I apologize. I simply, because of the length of what you're saying, I'm not able to follow you. I'm talking specifically about the ordinance that's in existence now.
In Gary.
Explain just that. You don't explain the state or other cities, just what you're asking for in Gary. That's what I don't understand.
Okay, the Gary ordinance that was already passed unanimously in 2019 says that dogs cannot be left on a chain overnight or when it's under 32 degrees or over 90 degrees. And it's common sense. I mean, other than short periods, you let them go out to go to the bathroom, that kind of thing. But it's just a common sense, humane ordinance that says dogs cannot live their lives on chains. So they have to be brought in at night from 10 to 6 and when it's over 90 and under 32 degrees.
What kind of dog do you have? Do you have a companion dog or service dog yourself?
Companion dogs.
Companion dog. Now, are you aware that I have figures that differs from your figures. Some of it says only approximately 22% of African Americans have dogs and cats. I can't seem to get a breakdown of that percentage, where 61% of non-African Americans and non-Hispanics, whites, have dogs, and a large percentage of their dogs are companion dogs, as opposed to within the Black community, they're not companions, they're more or less service protection dogs. Are you familiar with those figures I just gave you?
I'm not familiar with your figure. I'm aware that some people leave their dogs on chains for life. Yes, I am. They consider that their property, that they can do anything they want with. I am familiar with that.
Are you familiar with that most African Americans do not bring the dog into the home and treat it as a member of the family?
No, because most of the African Americans I've talked to love their dogs and treat them like family. I have not encountered any racial difference. I mean, the people in the South in Lowell do the same thing. They chain their dogs.
Hey
So-
guys, I'm on the Zoom meeting, so I need y'all to be quiet.
Wait. Please mute your phone if you're not part of the discussion that's going on at hand.
I apologize. I was trying to unmute myself. I was trying to figure it out. Thank you.
All right.
I would suggest you look, there's ethnic breakdowns. Matter of fact, 22%, let's say African Americans, 27% Asians, 40% Hispanics, and 61% white. That's across all of the figures. I've looked at the figures. The last figures I've seen was 2011. So I'm not sure how many African Americans you talk to, but those are the figures that come from the state. So again, and I noticed you had a 2021 figure. I guess my position is it's the difference between the dogs that you have for service. And again, I don't have a problem with 32 degrees and 90 degrees, 32 below or 90, what you do with the animal. But in general, the animal is not coming into the house of African Americans. That is a fact. That's not something I'm creating.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I don't know how this process works. Do we have to like raise our hand or?
I will acknowledge you in a minute. Let me, my councilman, Mr. Lay, get finished, and Ms. Hankey, and then I'll open up for someone else that'd like to speak.
Thank you. I didn't know how this works.
Okay.
Well, let them speak. I pretty much have absolutely different figures. Unless
Councilman,
we
let me just-
we have
Councilman-
more. Well, let me finish, ma'am, and then I certainly. But you go ahead, and then I'm going to talk about the number of homeless people that also exist.
I was just going to point out that we did not do a racial breakdown. We did an overall breakdown. And when the Pets for Life, the vast majority of people that we're trying to service are African American who want vet services, who need food assistance and that kind of thing. So we didn't do a racial breakdown because I'm aware that we're in a largely African American city with an African American
78.7% to be exact.
Sure, but an African-American panel passed this ordinance unanimously, and it is the law, and it's something that the FBI and the Sheriff's Association is recommending that law enforcement get more involved in because it is a way to track segue crime. But no, I didn't present the racial breakdown because I know that we're in a Black city, and most of the people that I'm trying to help are Black pet owners.
Well, I was probably one of the first code enforcement officers. I noticed Judge Monroe is on. I think I did that for several years. 2007, 8, and 9, where I dealt with animal control. I guess my concern is that we have a tremendous number of people. Matter of fact, let me just ask you a question. See, do we think there is a, what is your position on the bill in Miller about housing veterans? What's your position on that?
I think we need to house veterans.
In Miller?
Well, I don't know where it's going to go, but if it's in Miller,
6938 Anwood Avenue.
Okay, I have no problem with housing veterans. They need housing. And there are a lot of these dog programs, I should point out, that are specifically targeting the mental health of veterans. I mean, one of the best PTSD programs in the world pairs veterans who have emotional harm trains them on interacting with their pets. And there have been amazing increases in the mental health metrics for veterans and for children at risk.
Again, those would be companion dogs we were talking about, as opposed to a service or a protection dog, right?
Sure.
Okay. I'm just saying people treat probably the companion dog is not as well trained as the protection or service dog, the one that's kept in the household. I've taken enough time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Let me back off, let other people speak.
Okay, I'm trying to find the person that was just trying to speak just a minute ago. And let me acknowledge that our judge is on, Judge Deidre Monroe has joined us also.
Oh, here I am, the one who was speaking earlier.
Okay, can I get your name?
I'm Tia Friend Johnson.
Okay.
So I'm also a resident of Gary, the Miller section of Gary. I also am familiar with Bree Hake and the animal ordinance. Let's see. I don't know how to really work this thing yet, but so I'm just like the audio. I don't know if you guys can see the picture of me and my dog up there. So when this ordinance first started, I was just a little bit concerned about the language of it all, about the animals being left out, chained up. And I agreed to something. And as the gentleman earlier was explaining, the differences between dogs, companion dogs, service dogs. So I train dogs for a living. I have Friends Forever Pet Services. So as that's a part of my job, I do service both sides. I work in the working dog as far as protection, service, and I also work with pet people. And there's also a lot of education I see that needs to be shared between working dog people and pet people. Because as I explained in one of the meetings, it was with the congressman years ago, sometimes a part of that chain work is training. I have a German Shepherd, so 32 degrees or under 32 degrees is nothing for him. Some of these dogs are conditioned for harsh weather. So how do we police whose dogs are conditioned for these things instead of having a bunch of people running around having the city go out unnecessarily? Like, for instance, I'm a victim of this. I have neighbors next door who consistently report me to code enforcement and animal because they don't have an understanding of what I do, what the dog's purpose is. And my dogs are trained so they don't bark at night. But unfortunately, because they know I run a pet business, any dog that's loose or barking in the neighborhood, I get the phone calls. So my thing is, how do we educate people? Because this animal thing, there's sometimes a misconception that if you love animals, you don't care about people as much. How do we educate each other and educate people that it'll benefit people and the dogs without overly policing and making it a headache for pet owners?
Okay. Sabrina, this is definitely out of my wheelhouse. Here, I'm just going to host a meeting here.
Yeah, so Tia, I respect what you have to say and what you do, and it's unfortunate that people call on you, but you're right. We need to educate. That's why our whole proposal is educate, don't confiscate. My understanding on the Pets for Life is that the vast majority of African Americans want more humane treatment of animals, and they want Gary Animal Control to be able to assist them. Sometimes they need help with vets, sometimes they need help with food, but the people who have their dogs on chains, we can just educate them that this is something we now know that dogs have the intellect of a young child, And that's, chaining anything for life is horrific. And it's just an old mindset we need to educate. We certainly don't want to confiscate, and we don't want to be punitive, because where would we put the dogs? That the whole campaign is to get the city to raise awareness of some of this abuse that's going on. I'm sure that Sergeant Breitenstein could share with you some of the horrible starvation cases in the city of Gary. I don't think the council wants that on their hands. Probably not aware that these things are going on, but it wouldn't be that hard to bring it to public attention. But we try to remain positive. I think a lot of the times that when the dogs are abused or they die, they face starvation, malnutrition, and no water. You have to understand these are beings that are on chains that can't get off of them. So having them come in part of the day at least forces some interaction and reminds the owner, I need to feed this dog. I need to, give it some water. This is a daily thing that has to happen. So I totally agree with Tia. This is a matter of educate. Don't confiscate. We don't want to overly police. We want to make this part of a community effort to sort of bring us together, not divide us. And you can find exceptions to every solution. You will find a problem. There's no doubt about that.
And just as far as dividing it between race and culture, it's been in my experience that animals and people who love animals and understand them, it goes beyond all of that.
Oh, for sure.
It's just not about the African Americans, because I've worked and certain people just do not believe animals belong in the house. So I had a situation where there was a person who kept their dog on a chain, and I could not change their mindset whatsoever. But what I did do was educate them. Hey, keep food, keep water, and let's get a dog house.
Right.
This is how you protect them in the winter. Okay, let's keep them on the chain, and then let's do this.
Right.
And so that way, instead of making their way, because some of these people are going to leave their dogs on a chain. How can we teach them the proper collars, the proper chain to use, how the dog won't get wrapped up, legs won't get wrapped up, what are the options? Just as long, can that dog get to shelter?
Yeah. I just wanted to echo what Tia just said. The vast majority of animal advocates are also racial equity advocates. There's a lot of overlap between those two groups for racial justice and for humane animal treatment, because it's just people who have, big humane hearts who want to have a better country. And I think the same people in Gary are active in this situation. And we don't want an ordinance where there's no discretion. We're not after the Akitas that are left, the winter dogs are left outside. We're after the short-haired dogs that are freezing on a chain. And the officers who work for animal control have discretion. They've got a beat. They know what's going on. They can educate and interact with people in a non-punitive way to help educate them. The ordinance wasn't just about the chain. It was also about the proper housing, needing a flap, needing certain elements to have humane housing. You can't just put a dog out in a big tin shelter. If it's 85 degrees outside, it's 110 degrees in that tin shed. And so there's more to it than just the chaining. But generally we're looking for a more humane city, and we're looking for the city city leaders to help push this message.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Councilman Lay.
I yield to whoever asked to speak ahead of me. I yield to them.
Robertson.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilman, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. This is Michelle Robinson. I am the owner of Clean Paws Mobile Grooming Salon and also the non-for-profit organization Cause for Paws Gary. And I, like Tia, I do have an issue with the ordinance, because it's like you're saying this is the ordinance, but we're going to say how we're going to enforce it. I have an issue with the part of the dogs it have to go in the house when it's over 90 degrees. Okay. Some people don't have air conditioning. So if the dog goes in the house when the it's over 90 degrees, both the pet owner, both the guardian and the pet are in trouble. And we as an organization had that happen to one of our volunteers in 2018 when we had the heat wave. Her and her dogs and she suffocated to death in their house because she didn't leave her dogs outside, but it was over 90 degrees at nighttime, and the heat index in her house exceeded
what their body could tolerate, and they all died of heat exhaustion. In addition, some people leave their houses during the day and they turn the air conditioning off to save money. So if you're saying that it's going to be 90 degrees outside and you bring the dog in the house, that's an issue. So I think that should be rewritten and reworded, because it's like, okay, if you have the ordinance, but then you're saying, well, we have the ordinance, but you can enforce it or not enforce it, then that leaves too much open for when it will and will not be enforced. The information and the language needs to be clear. I mean, again, there can be issues where there are an extenuating circumstance. However, when you say that the dog has to be inside at 90 degrees and this is the ordinance, if that person doesn't have air conditioning, that dog is in trouble. And so is the guardian.
Can I comment on that? Michelle, isn't pet ownership an option though? I mean, if they're putting the animal at risk, is that really, should they own pets?
But that's not your decision to make. People have animals for different reasons. And we also run a pet food pantry. And our pet food pantry services the majority of Gary people. Just because you're not financially able to do certain things, it does not mean you should be denied the right to own a pet. For whatever reason, some people, the pet is all that they have. Some of the guardians that we service, that's all they have. That's the only contact that they have. Are they in the best situations? No. But because we are there and we offer a pet food pantry, we also offer a bridge to that guardian to get help. There's a lot of people that are out here that own pets that need help. And the only way that you can get to them to give them help is to help their pet. So it's not a punish you if you do this thing wrong, or this or this not done exactly right or according to someone's ideal. People sometimes do the best that they can. They do that with their children. They may not have the best, they may not have Nintendo or whatever it is that they have out here now, but they have a roof over their head, their clothes on their backs. It may not be the best of what's available, but it's the best that they can do. So I think when you start looking through a narrow lens of should they have it or should they not have it, it's their right to have a pet if they want it. But should they abuse a pet? No. But sometimes some things happen and people fall on hard times and they don't have everything that they need to provide for that pet. Sometimes they don't have what they need to provide for themselves. So are you going to come in and say, well, you don't have this, and this, and so you shouldn't have a pet?
Let me go to
Mr. Chairman, you remember I yield to the group. I agree with most of what the young lady just said. It's a matter of economics, how a pet is treated, whether you have a goldfish or a dog or a cat. The other thing, I think a mistake was made. Dog does not have the IQ of a young child. The gorilla has an IQ of a young child. It's about somewhere between 75 and 95. The dog's IQ is not that high. It's trained. It doesn't have that type of IQ. Again, we're talking about economics here, and I agree. I think even e-learning I think it's different within the African American community versus the white community. Both of them are probably underserved, but again, it's how you have a space in the home for the child, how you feed the child. All of that comes into being. The ordinance, I guess several times said the ordinance was passed 9-0. I believe 5 of the people that voted in the affirmative for this ordinance are gone. The only remaining 3 or 4, please correct, I think it's 4 remaining. That would be you, Mr. Chairman, I believe Councilman at Large Brown, 5th District Councilman Linda Barnes Caldwell, and 3rd District Mary Brown. So that's less than the 5 that have now come aboard. From what I do know about the ordinance, and I admitted at the very outset, I have not read the entire ordinance. I would not have voted for it. So it would not have went through the council 9-0. It would have been, if I'd have been there, it would have been 8-1, I guess. I'm not sure about that. But if African Americans want it, why don't we look at some way that we can ask them, as opposed to what appears to be here. And again, I have to be very careful, because every time I raise this issue, people say I'm attacking, seem to be pretty much Miller residents. They do not seem to come from the other 5 districts, stating that this is a problem in those districts. Same way, I don't know why all of the dogs are dropped off in the 1st district. It would seem to me if they're abandoning dogs, they're being abandoned everywhere within the city. So maybe we should hold up a moment and just ask the citizens of this community through some type of polling. I certainly can show you how to do it very economically, whether or not they want this, whether or not they even agree with the 2019 ordinance. That would be one way. Certainly if the people of this community, and I think the ethnic breakdown is extremely important. It's done throughout this state and throughout the country, but for some reason we're not doing it here. And it appears also that we do not see African Americans talking in favor of the ordinance. Now, maybe I'm missing something. One lady I couldn't tell, but because I didn't see her picture, but I went based on her voice patterns, that I could be mistaken about that. So that's what I would suggest, that we in fact ask the people of this community in all districts if this is something that they want done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let me go to Ms. Sabrina, and then I've seen Ms. Jessica Fatalis hit her hand, so I'll go in that order there.
Okay, so just a couple of things. I don't have a point for point, because there's always going to be a percentage of all populations, not just Black, but white and every ethnic group, a percentage that thinks that dogs on chains are fine, that they are property, and that the owners can do whatever they want to those dogs. That cohort will always be there. And there's nothing we can do about that. But I submit to you that the vast majority of African Americans support humane treatment. I put in one of the statistics that 90% across all demographics in the United States believe that dogs have some legal rights and should have some legal protection. That's why certain treatments are felonies under every criminal code of every state, and now the United States. So the codes, the laws are there for a reason. And I believe that the councilman who is opposed to this is probably projecting his opinion, which is what everyone does. But having done, a lot of this work and a lot of this research, I believe that the vast majority of African Americans want more humane treatment of animals, and they want help. We are not trying to confiscate dogs at all. And Michelle Robinson's example earlier about someone after this humane ordinance was passed, suffocating with their animals, we haven't even started enforcing the ordinance yet. So I don't know what that connection is. I believe people are looking for problems for every solution. So far, we haven't done anything. So I can't see any downside of trying to educate people and getting them the assistance they need. If they need food, if they need shelter, if they need vet assistance, this will help us identify them. And it's a community service. It's not a community imposition. And I just think there's a difference of opinion here, and I respect it, but I don't think that Councilman Lay's opinion is the majority opinion. I believe that the vast majority of African Americans support this, and I'll point out that there is a board. So we've got a number of groups that are doing different things, but the animal board that was just appointed is over half African American. Our chairman with me is Jeffrey Smith, and some of our vocal supporters are African American. So I just think that this is old school, old thinking, and that times have changed. And that is not anymore the majority opinion, even among the African American community. Do I know? No. But I've just talked to enough people on a daily basis, and I think that the vast majority of them, really love their pets. And I know that Jessica Vitalis, who's been working in this field forever, was with Lake County. Lake County, by the way, has the same ordinance. It is illegal throughout Lake County. Lake County ordinance And I put that in the reference. It is illegal to chain a dog for life. It's horrifically cruel. And that Lake County ordinance was passed a long time ago. So I know that Jessica wanted to speak, and I should defer to her because she knows more than I do about it for sure.
Hi, everybody. I am Shelter Director at Humane Indiana in Munster. We work with Gary Animal Control a lot. We think they're awesome. We try to pull from them as much as we can. And I've got a soft spot for animal control because I used to be an animal control officer for the Lake County Sheriff's Department. I was raising my hand earlier to a couple of things, but I think it's still relevant. Our shelter piloted what was called the Pets for Life program a few years ago. It was through the Humane Society of the United States, where we would basically go into, there were different cities all over the country, and in Indiana, Gary was chosen. And our shelter ran the program. So we basically looked at several zip codes that were the most densely populated. Miller was not one that we serviced. We wanted to, but we just didn't get there. I want to say that we went to, and again, I don't remember, I can get everybody the data, but I don't have it. That's just by memory. I'm pretty sure that we went to 46407, 04, and I think 06, but I could be wrong. And we basically just walked the blocks. We would spend like 4 days a week from like 8 a.m. to like 5, 6 o'clock and just walk up and down the street, knock on the doors. Hi, do you have pets? We're from Humane Indiana. We just want to give you some services for free or get you some supplies. The vast majority of the families we talked to, and there were hundreds of them, did want to bring their animals inside. If they didn't, the biggest reason why they did not is because they were worried about things that are really easy to remedy, like flea infestations, or you know, they don't want the dog jumping on the couch. And those were things that we were really easily able to fix and just provide either the supplies or the service to fix it. And they were more than willing to bring the animal in the house and did see the animal as a pet. There was only a handful of times that people said that they viewed the animal as like a protection dog, but even still it was a part of the family and they treated it as such. And in terms of service animals, I do have behavior certifications. That's how I started in animal welfare. Those are highly trained, highly skilled dogs, like what Tia was talking about, the ones that do want to live outside. Your average person is probably not going to have that as a pet. They might have a dog that, you know, they call their protection dog or like their security system, but they're probably not like the highly trained, gone through years of training, certified service animals. I mean, if Tia's training them, she knows what it takes to train them. It is rigorous training to get a dog to truly be like a canine working dog. You're not going to see a lot of just citizens with those dogs. And if they do, I'm sure that animal control would immediately be able to recognize it because they're used to working with canine officers. So in those instances, I think that the animal control officers using their discretion would be best, and they probably wouldn't be cited or penalized in any way for having those animals live outside. And in those situations, if they do, but the majority of the people that I ran across didn't have that. They called their animals protection dogs, and what they meant was they had a big dog that barked when strangers walked by the house. But I mean, my dogs do that too. I think that's just general canine behavior.
Mr. Chairman, just one, could you give me the figures you came up with 46407? You don't have to do it now. I'll give you a phone, well, 219-712-1494. I'd like to know the figures that you got in 46407.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that. I have to go through our old files. But
no, that's fine. That's fine. If you give it to me, I'll make sure the rest of the council get it.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
You need me to repeat the number?
Is it easier for me to email you the data?
The email is a lot longer. I tell you what you do, if you take the number, and I don't want to take too much time, it's 219-712-1494. I will then give you the email. Okay. And my number is available to anyone. You can give anyone my number. It's like
712-1494.
Yes, ma'am. If you call me, I would be more than happy to give you my email.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Sabrina, you have it.
just wanted to clarify real quickly, Jessica, did I hear you say that you serviced hundreds of families and that only a handful of them wanted to keep their dog on a chain all the time? Is that correct?
Yeah, there was not a lot. There were really not that many people that were like, absolutely not, this dog's never coming in. And what I found was it was more of a generational thing. And I can tell you from my time as a Lake County animal control officer, our jurisdiction that we had to service was all the unincorporated parts of Lake County. And there was like some weird jurisdictional crosses. So I had the very far like east side of Gary we would get called out to, and then a lot of South County and in between. And I can tell you that the people that I ran into as an animal control officer that kept their dogs outside because they just believed that's where they belonged, there was no difference at all in race. What I found was that it was really a generational thing. You know, it tended to be the older that the residents were, the more they believed that they belonged outside. And it was just kind of like some old school stuff, like Sabrina said. Like a lot of them, they didn't have a lot of like dog food available because they just grew up feeding dogs scraps off the table, and that was okay. So it wasn't really a big difference from what I saw racially across the entire county. To be honest with you, I think I had more people with dogs outside living in South County and my Lowell and like Schneider calls than I did up north. Far more.
Right. Weren't the vast majority of people in the Pets for Life program that you helped, the hundreds of people, weren't most of them African American?
Yeah.
How do people get on your commission? You said Jeffrey Smith, and you said a majority are African American. How were they appointed to this board?
Well, there's two different ones.
How did they get there? I'm sorry. How did?
Okay, Ms. Anke, you can
Go ahead and tell me how they got on the board. I'm sorry.
There are two different boards. There's the Gary Animal Welfare Coalition that submitted this report to you that I'm here speaking on behalf of. The other one is the Mayor's Commission to make recommendations for how to improve the humane treatment of animals. He appointed those individuals. And those are two different groups. I don't know which one you're asking about.
Oh, I'm going to ask you about both of them. That'll solve that problem. Jeffrey Smith, did the mayor appoint him?
Yes.
Okay, so that's one board. How did your board, how many African Americans on the board that you're speaking in behalf of?
Well, we don't really have a board. We have a loose ad hoc group of people.
Give me that number. Ad hoc, how many on ad hoc?
4.
Total of 4 people?
Right today, yes, because we came together for the ordinance, and then we sort of fell apart after the ordinance to try to come up with ways to find resources. So, and yeah, I mean, we don't have an ongoing thing. This is an advocacy group. We've got the Humane Society, the Animal Welfare Coalition, and then the Animal Board. They're just 3 different groups.
It's 3 groups now, not 2. It's 3. What's the third group? What's the size of the third group?
I can't speak to the Humane Society, sir. I'm not on it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that has not spoke that would like to speak at this time? All right, Jill.
Well, I'm sorry, I already spoke. I had my hand raised, but
I can't see
Mr. You can't see me.
No.
Bear with me, guys. My video is like horrible. Let's see. How do I get on here?
You're on. We can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Here I am.
Okay.
Can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I have a question in regards to just following up with the board, because Bree, as we were talking, how did the mayor go about appointing it? Because I was interested in being on the board. And how many professional people that train animals or have a background in working dogs, pet dogs, companion dogs, how many people on there? Or is it just citizens who just like dogs or just have companion dogs?
So I can give you the list, and I can post I'll be happy to send out a list with our pictures. We have to get them. We've only met a few times. One is Carl Wright. He's African American. He has All Pet Supplies. There's another.
Yes.
Yeah, Lindsay Murray, also African American. He has a kennel business. Michelle Robinson was appointed to it. Jeffrey Smith, Deborah Russell. So those are the Gary individuals, and then Jerry Caney's from Humane Society, and then another gentleman whose name escapes me. But yeah, that's basically it. And when you and I talked about this a long time ago, I think some things fell through the cracks because someone on the mayor's staff was appointing the board and then didn't get the memo or thought they appointed it and didn't. I think the mayor thought that this had happened some time ago. So I would certainly like to get you on the board if you want to serve, because we need more African-American people, boots on the ground, who know what they're talking about. So it would be great. And if that's something that you want to do, send that out to him.
I definitely would, because like I said, I'm a hybrid. I see there's a lot. In the dog world, there's like subcategories within the dog world. It's just not, and pet people get mad at working dog people. I'm a hybrid, and I serve to educate people that it goes beyond color, but sometimes people do have an idea that Black people versus African Americans and white people, we differ from it. But I'm just about humane and education and not separating.
Right. We're not trying that. We are the same. Most of us on our board have the same thoughts, and I do believe it's a generation issue, not a racial issue.
It's economics. It's not generational. It's economics.
Right. It goes all of it. A lot.
Yeah,
a lot of it.
It's not age. No, that's.
I just want
to.
How do we bridge together? Because there's so many different ideas about it. I've seen it all, but I noticed that when I approach it with education and love, and this is a living being. Right. How would you feel being out here? And when you approach it like that, people are more happy to listen to you versus you saying, "Hey, you can't afford a dog, or you can't do this." And people sometimes don't even understand the training, like Jessica was talking about protection dogs. Yeah, it is work.
Yeah,
they are highly trained.
The Gary Community School System is 99% African American. The children are not adequately being fed during this pandemic because you have to go and pick up the food. The people that can pick it up don't need to pick it up. The people that should pick it up, they're unable to do so. The parent may leave the household, and the children simply does not sign on to e-learning. So it is basically economics. Those are the things. So to suggest that it's generational, that's not true.
But sir, it doesn't cost a dime to bring your dog in. It literally costs zero, not even a penny to bring your dog in. If you're feeding it already, you've got that expense. Bringing it in is cost neutral. It doesn't.
No, the children are not being fed in many cases, let alone the dog. The children. That's all I'm trying to show, that children themselves are not because people dislike children. It's a matter of economics. That's all I was trying to correct. It's not generational. It's economics.
Let me come back to a little somewhere we should probably be at, where we were talking about the facility and things of that nature. The council can only recommend. I think it's a good recommendation for option 2. As it was outlined, I personally think it's possibly feasible to get this done. So I definitely will take this up in the ask to the mayor if I don't do a resolution to bring it before the city council and see who all can support this. But I think there are a lot of people that are dog lovers throughout the entire city. And I do know there are some serious issues with the housing of the dogs as we go out and capture them, trying to house them. It's just not fit. And I have not, this is what I've heard how the facility looked, but I will be taking a tour myself of the facility also to bring my recommendation personally to the mayor about it. When it comes to the conversation about the animal control officer and his pay, that's a sticky little conversation because it's throughout the police department. They all need a raise. The council tried to push a raise for the entire department last year, and where we were successful getting it done, but it got vetoed by the mayor, and we did not have the votes to override the veto. So I think it's something that we need to look at across the board. As a council, I would have to say I have to look at it across the board, not just animal control, but I do believe that they need a raise also. I never known all the different things animal control does until One time I had to call out animal control because someone was housing an alligator inside of their apartment. And not knowing that our animal control can deal with something of that nature. It was a baby alligator. And I never seen anything like that in my life. But, you know, I got very educated very quickly of what can happen with a baby alligator and how quick and how fast they grow. But our animal control came out and they removed the alligator. You know, I have never seen anything like that in my life, but they do a lot of different things. And it's not just about dogs and cats. They go way beyond the call of duty. And I think they should be compensated properly, as well as all of our police and fire should be compensated in what they do for us. Our judge is on, and I don't know if she would like to have anything to add before we kind of bring this to an end. Judge Monroe?
Yes, I would just like to say hello to everyone. I really have nothing to add other than what has been said previously by the police department and, of course, the sergeant. Sergeant and her group, they work tirelessly to, you know, bring in strays to do what they can for the safety of this city. On several occasions, I know that persons have made calls directly to her to reach out because dogs were running through the neighborhood. I can say that I don't think the 2019, I don't think they have been doing a lot on that ordinance as it relates to bringing those persons into the court. But I will let everyone know that persons for and against the ordinance, the team from the Gary Police Department, they know what to do. If they're called, they can easily determine whether a dog is being threatened, whether that dog is being abused. And they also know when the dog is not being abused. So they have the expertise to know when to bring persons to court and when not to bring persons to court. So I would just say we have a great team, and they probably need to be increased in ranks because I believe there's only about 3 or 4 of them. So even with giving them raises, ranks need to be increased also. But, this was a very educational chat, and I look to hearing more. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one minor point, and then I'm through.
Yes.
I'm sure everyone knows we cannot appropriate and spend. Any spending of the nature that's being suggested in option 2 would have to come from the administration. We cannot say, well, we want to spend $104,000, appropriate the money and then spend it. That has been well settled law in terms of the city of Gary. It probably is over the state. You can't do both. So if the mayor has, I assume we're talking about Mayor Prince. I'm not sure.
Yes, Mayor Prince.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it would change my position, but he certainly would have to be the one to ask the council to do it. In other words, he's an important ingredient. And I noticed they were invited. They just, I guess, chose not to show up. Well, he's out of town. Is what I think a letter came through saying he was going to be out of town tomorrow or other day. So again, we cannot appropriate option 2 and then spend the money. We can't do that. Thank you.
Yes, I am familiar that the council per se, that's why I said I will request it to the mayor that he will take on option 2 and bring it before the council for any financial approval. But I do support option 2 because I know there are some great concerns with the way animals are being housed at this time. Is there anything else? If nothing else, I thank everyone for attending. Councilwoman Atkins, anything? Okay, thank you. Thank my council, and I thank all the attendees, and thank you, Sabrina, for all that you continue to do. And we look forward to continue to work with you all to make sure that animals are safe inside our community. Everyone have a good night and God bless.
Really grateful for this. Thank you. Grateful for
Have a
this.
good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.